The answer is because we have two brains, right? It's not just the brain in our head that's determining how we feel and how we perform. We have a brain in our gut, what we call the second brain. And the gut is actually the source of the majority of our neurotransmitters. So if we're not considering what the second brain is doing, we're really missing a whole host of ways to improve our performance.
Welcome back to Unstoppable After 50. How you feel directly is related to the food you're putting in your body. My guest today is Dr. Shawn Talbott. He's the author of a book called Mental Fitness, where he describes the connection between your brain and your gut biome. This is a critical conversation for everybody, but in particular, guys over 50, because how you feel is not necessarily just normal aging. So stay tuned for an interesting conversation with Dr. Shawn Talbott. Dr. Talbott, welcome to the show.
Hey, it's great to be here, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Hey, Shawn, I appreciate your time. I appreciate the years, if not decades, of work that you have done. And before we jump in, I want to do something a little bit different here. I'd love to hear a little bit more about not only your professional background, because you've done a lot, but also your academic background and why it's so relevant for guys over 50.
Yeah, well, my academic background, I have a PhD in nutritional biochemistry, right? So, a lot of times when I'm educating people, I'm talking a lot about biochemistry. I'm talking about neurotransmitters and stress hormones and inflammatory markers and things like that. And the reason I do that is because those signals that your body makes, that biochemistry, drives our behavior. It drives how we feel, it drives how we think, how we perform, whether we're stressed out or calm, whether we're fatigued or energetic. All of that comes from our biochemistry. So if we can understand the biochemistry, we can modulate it. We can go in there and say, okay, my cortisol is high. What do I need to do to lower that? And what are the benefits from that, et cetera, et cetera. So, the kind of work that I've done for the past 20 or so years, these days is called nutritional psychology. Like when I was back in school, there wasn't a discipline like that. But now there's this whole discipline about the scientific link between food and mood. And so what I end up trying to get people to understand is here's the science, here's what you can do about that science, and usually it comes down to eat less of this and more of that, or try to get more of this particular nutrient in your diet because that's going to change your biochemistry and that's going to level up your performance in whatever way that we're talking about.
So nutritional psychology?
Right. Yep.
Wow. So just give me, now I'm interested in this. This is something that's been around for how long, just roughly?
So as a scientific field, maybe only 10 years, but there are several scientific organizations now that are, the International Society for Nutritional Psychology Research. There's several of them because, we've known for thousands of years that, food can be your medicine, right? I talk about that all the time. Like Hippocrates, the father of medicine, said, let food be thy medicine and medicine be thy food. So we've known about this for, 2,500 years. But it's only in the last couple of decades that we've had the science to show, hey, if you eat this way, like standard American diet, lots of processed food, lots of the wrong kinds of fats, that kind of stuff. If you eat that way, you're more susceptible to anxiety or depression or burnout or sleep problems. But if you eat, this other way, Mediterranean style, which is like, more fruits and vegetables, lean proteins, healthy fats, lots of fiber. You eat that way, and not only is it protective against depression, anxiety, stress, those sorts of things, but it can actually be therapeutic. So there's studies to show that if you have depression and you start eating a Mediterranean style diet, within about 6 to 12 weeks, it's actually more effective than things like Prozac or Zoloft or something like that. So it's a really interesting way of thinking about self-medicating with foods.
Gosh, Shawn, I couldn't agree more. I truly hope, because I see what's going on as a father of two fairly young daughters.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen over the years. I mean, it's just amazing what kids are on these days at such a young age, and yet their diets are so, horrible. It's a very intriguing field, and I think obviously it's only probably going to get more and more important, and hopefully more connect it with the general population. Now, I know
Right.
as part of this effort, your own effort, you recently published the book, Mental Fitness.
Yep.
Tell me more about that book and why did you decide to write that book?
Yeah, well, the main reason I wrote it was kind of to answer the question that you just sort of raised there, which is, we have this problem in the world where most of us, the majority of us, don't feel the way we want to feel, right? Where our mood is too low, whether you have depression or not. Your feelings of tension and irritability are too high, whether you have anxiety disorder or not. People just feel kind of crummy. So and because of that, because our energy is low and we have brain fog and we just feel kind of blah all the time, people are self-medicating or being actually medicated with antidepressants and anti-anxieties, or we're reaching for coffee all the time, or we're reaching for alcohol, or whatever the case may be. We're using a lot of things to change how we feel. And a lot of those things will change how we feel, right? They can make us feel less bad in a sense, but none of them help us feel good because none of them are getting to the root cause of the problem. And the root cause of the problem is what we call the second brain. It's our gut. It's the bacteria in our gut. That is the source of the majority of our neurotransmitters. So our gut makes about 90% of our serotonin. That's the neurotransmitter of happiness. And so if our gut isn't making that, we're not going to be as happy as we possibly could be. Our gut makes about 70% of our dopamine. That's the neurotransmitter of motivation. It makes about 50% of our GABA, which is the body's primary relaxing neurotransmitter. So if we don't have enough GABA, we're tense and irritable and stressed out, and we can't relax and we can't get good sleep. So if we could sort of step back and say, why do I feel crummy? Well, it's because I don't have the right level of these neurotransmitters, or they're being blocked by something. How can I change that? How can I get my gut to make the right level of neurotransmitters so it signals my brain in my head that I'm energetic and focused and resilient and all those sorts of things? And that's why I wrote the mental fitness book, to show people that we're kind of doing it wrong right now if we're just reaching for, an energy drink or a pill, and we can actually solve a lot of these problems through nutrition.
Quick pause. If you're not getting my Unstoppable After 50 playbook, you're missing out. Every week, I send a one-page playbook with my key interview takeaways and simple actions to help you stay strong and in control. Get it free each week at unstoppableafter50.com. Now back to the show. So Shawn, I have to believe that most guys over 50, this is like probably fairly new, right? This whole concept. I mean, even I'm pretty in tune with this, my body, and it's only been in the last few years I've even become aware of what you're talking about here.
Right.
So let's dial this conversation about guys, for guys. I mean, if someone's watching or listening to this, how do they discern just sort of the natural aging process?
Right.
Getting older, just we know what it's like.
Yep.
And their diet and their gut biome.
Yeah, well, it's the way you just framed it is perfect, right? Because I'm in that category as well, right? I'll be 59 this year, and it's one of those things where so many people in our age category will feel the way that I just described, right? Kind of crummy, kind of irritable, kind of low energy, just whatever, And I think a lot of guys will go, well, I guess that's how it is, right? I'm getting older. I don't eat a perfect diet, right? I try my best, but I eat probably too many hamburgers and slices of pizza and stuff like that. And I'm right there. I'm right there with you, right? I'm not telling people they can't eat those kinds of things. We can get into details later. They might kind of look around themselves and go, well, everyone I know feels the same way, right? So I guess this is normal. And I'll say that it's definitely typical because most people feel this way, but it's absolutely not normal. The normal situation is that your gut would get the right nutrients, the right fibers, the right phytonutrients, the right, all the right building blocks. It would make the amount of neurotransmitters that we want. As a result of that, you'd be energetic during the day. You'd be a good problem solver. When what hits the fan, you would kind of go, wow, not a great situation, but we'll figure this out, right? You'd have good problem solving. You'd have what we call cognitive flexibility, so you can sort of like navigate that stressful situation. And then at the end of the day, you'd be able to wind down. You'd be able to relax. You'd be able to fall right asleep. You'd be able to get good quality sleep and pop out of bed the next morning and do it all again, right? And that, like, I describe it that way, and it sounds kind of like utopia, right? Who is this guy? Like nobody lives that life. That sounds ridiculous. But that should be the normal situation. And we actually know enough about it scientifically to say, you know what? We can make some little tweaks. This isn't like completely changing your whole lifestyle. This is making a few little tweaks to get the right signaling across your gut brain axis and literally level up your performance so you perform as a different machine.
So, Shawn, obviously, we want to encourage my audience to go check out your book, check out your YouTube channel, and we'll talk all about that in a little bit too. But without getting to a PhD level,
Uh-huh.
can you break it down for my audience? This whole, I mean, if you're into health and fitness, you do hear gut and bacteria and biome, and all. You hear this in passing. Can you kind of give us an overview, just so a kind of a 101 description of what you're really talking about here?
Yeah, so it can get very complicated when you start thinking about all the signaling across the gut-brain axis. So the general idea is that if you're sad, you might think, oh, it's a serotonin problem. Or if you're unmotivated, you might think, oh, it's a dopamine problem. So the sort of, the knee-jerk reaction to say, oh, I need more serotonin, I need more dopamine, and that's where the like antidepressants would come in, right? That's not always the problem. It could be, right? That's one of the things. You might not have enough serotonin, but it could be that you have plenty of serotonin, but it's getting blocked by something. It's getting blocked by a stress hormone like cortisol, or it's getting blocked by an inflammatory marker that we call cytokines. So in that situation, it's not really a neurotransmitter problem per se. It's an inflammatory problem, or it's a stress hormone problem. So in that scenario, you don't need more serotonin, you need less cortisol. Then you can ask yourself the question, well, where's this cortisol coming from? Where is this inflammation coming from? And that might be because your immune system is out of balance. And so now it's an immune system a problem. You want to sort of tamp down your immune system activity so you're not, overactive immune system response. Well, why is your immune system out of balance? It could be because your gut integrity, what we call leaky gut, is leading to that immune system agitation. Why is your gut in a leaky scenario? Well, you might have the wrong bacteria in your gut. You might have too many of the bad bacteria that are leading to this leaky gut. So it's kind of like this dominoes game, if you will, right? This like trying to figure out like, all right, how do I know what's causing me to feel crummy? Is it my neurotransmitters or my cortisol or my leaky gut? Could be any of those or all of those. And that's why I very often come back to nutrition to say, you know what? Let's change what we're delivering to the gut. And as a result of that, you change all of that signaling and you feel better. And it, like, in my perspective, like as a scientist, I'm interested in why, like, which one of those signals did I change? And what's the mechanism where this person is now feeling better? But if you're the person, you don't care about any of that. You just care that you feel better. So like I really try to come at it from a systems approach and say, you know what? Let's use nutrition to normalize all of those signals. And as a result of that, you feel and perform at your peak.
So if someone's, watching or listening to us right now and, they're feeling kind of like you described earlier, which is pretty much all of us at least at various
Yeah,
points in time.
unfortunately.
What is that next first step, Shawn? Like, what should someone do immediately? Is it just changing their diet? Is it getting tested? What does that look like, that path?
Yeah, the easiest first step is it kind of depends on the person, right? So, easiest first step, I'm a food first nutritionist. I'm also an advocate of supplements, but I like people, if they're open to it, to try to use food first. And it's really, really simple. We try to add things. I say to all the coaches that I train, don't try to take something away. Don't go and tell someone you're like, hey, no more cheeseburgers for you, no more pepperoni pizza for you. And like taking away something is like you put someone in this like, deprivation state. And as soon as you tell someone no hamburgers, what do they want? They want hamburgers. So, adding things is a lot easier. So you can say to someone, you know what, try having yogurt for breakfast. Try adding in a little bit more fiber into your diet, like, a piece of fruit, or have a salad for dinner, and, instead of a hamburger every once in a while. Like making those little dietary choices. And my favorite, actually, more fiber, more fermented foods, which yogurt would fall into that category, and more flavonoids. And flavonoids are just they're the plant compounds that make fruits and vegetables brightly colored, right? So you're going and, choosing, bright reds and bright oranges and purples and blues and greens and, as many colors as you can get. You do those three little things, it's going to dramatically change the signals, the good signals that are coming out of your gut. So that's the easiest thing to do. And what ends up happening over time, Mike, is that you do that, a couple of meals each week, and then you feel better. And because you feel better, you make better choices about the rest of your life. Like you'll move your body more, you'll be more resilient in the face of stress, so your stress hormones won't go up as high. You'll sleep more soundly, and if you get better sleep, you're going to be better the next day. So it creates like those little tiny dietary choices will sort of snowball in a positive direction, and you get better and better and better. And pretty soon you look down, 6 months, and you go, "Oh my gosh, I feel so much better now after just making a couple of these changes. I don't ever want to go back to where I was before."
Yeah, I love it. First of all, you're talking directly to me, right? This is me a couple years. No, seriously. I mean, being Italian, having an Italian background, I love to eat, right? And
Yeah.
I feel like eating clean. But some blood work about 5 years ago proved otherwise. And that's when I
Hmm.
really started getting serious about this. And this is where that nutritional psychology comes in, right? Don't
Right.
take stuff away, because as people, especially as
Yep.
guys, we're going to fight that. Don't tell me I can't have a couple hamburgers or whatever. But the addition part, and that's what I did. I started eating chia seed pudding every
Yep.
morning with plain yogurt, which at the time I was like, ugh, I love it now. I told you
Yep.
I've been
Yep.
making my own yogurt. And, I look forward to it now. And then you're 100% right. And I hope I can encourage others. You start making those small changes of adding something, and then you start feeling better, you start looking better, and then it does compound. So it makes so much sense, and I really appreciate you sharing
Yep.
that.
Yep, exactly. And you can, there's all kinds of tests that you can get these days. Like you can send away for a home
Yeah.
test, and you can get your microbiome measured, you can get your inflammatory markers measured. Like, and I use some of
What do
those
you
tests with
recommend,
the,
Shawn? What do you recommend there? Because we've talked about testing a lot, blood
yeah.
testing on this podcast, and I get very extensive blood testing twice a year. Which ones are the ones that you recommend, again,
Yeah, so I
for
use I
a
use a
guy?
couple of different labs. So if I'm measuring microbiome, I use a lab called Genova Diagnostics. They've got a test called GI Effects, I think it's called. And so I'm a little conflicted about recommending microbiome tests because people will get a microbiome test and you get so much information back from it, it's almost overwhelming. So when I do a test like that, I really focus my clients down on just a couple of the measurements. One of the key measurements you want to look at is something called short chain fatty acid levels. If your gut is producing these compounds called short chain fatty acids, that's a good thing. The more of those you can have, they're associated with endurance performance. They help with mental performance, like cognition in your brain. They help your immune system. They help your metabolism. They're associated with helping people lose weight. And if they're off, then like you're more likely to gain weight. So I look at the short chain fatty acids. But then we also, we're testing. We use a lab called ZRT to test blood glucose levels, to test inflammatory markers. I use another test called Dutch to look at hormone levels. So we'll look at hormones in men and women to see if, like, what does your testosterone look like? That's important. But how does it look in relation to your stress hormones like cortisol? So those are like sort of like the big measurements that I look at: cortisols, testosterones, inflammatory marker called CRP, a glucose marker called A1C, and then short chain fatty acids when it comes to a gut measurement. And then those, I actually plug those into a little algorithm that I have, and I give people their like resilience index. And if all those are in line, you're probably pretty resilient. You can handle a lot of stress. You feel good, like you're not tired and wired. You're more like resilient and ready to go. If any of those are off, that gives us a signal to go, aha, it's inflammation. Let's go and we'll do some things to knock down your inflammation or stop it at its source. Or if your short chain fatty acids are off, we'll go and give an intervention like that. But I don't do the testing right at the beginning for most people. For most people, I'll say, you know what? Go and make these little dietary choices, see how you feel, and then, like, they'll get better and better and better, like we just discussed. And then if they hit a roadblock, that's when we bring in the testing to say, okay, we're coming up against something that these changes aren't solving for you. Let's really dial down and see if we can figure out what your, what your biggest obstacle is there biochemically.
And I'm aware of all those tests. I have never done the gut biome test. Is that a blood test or is that something else?
It's a poop test. And so that's
Yes,
one of the reasons. Yeah, it's one of the reasons we don't recommend it right at the beginning. Like we sort of save that for the hard cases, if you will.
I thought so, but I just wanted to clarify that. That one's not a blood test.
Yeah,
Hence
so
why
some of them are
have not
pee,
taken.
some of them are blood, some of them are saliva. But then it's it's the ick factor of having to take a fecal sample that sort of, blocks people.
Well, listen, I mean, again, if you're not feeling great and, when you, in you want to take a more natural approach, it's just it's a simple step, right? It's not a big deal. So,
yeah, exactly. Exactly. If we could just, go back for a second, it's so I said I'm food first, right? And I want people to make those dietary choices. I'll get people sometimes who are like, yeah, I've heard all this before. I've heard I'm supposed to eat less of this and fewer cupcakes and less processed and less fast food and more vegetables and stuff. I've heard it a million times before, right? But there's this gap a lot of times between like what they know and what they're actually doing, like that sort of behavior gap. And so sometimes supplements can fit there as like almost like the easy button for people. So like if you have a good supplement that can help improve your sleep quality, awesome. If you have a good supplement that can help improve your motivation, or a good, specific probiotic strain that's going to lower your stress and improve your mood, awesome. Because then same thing can happen, right? You use the supplement, you start feeling better, and when you feel better, then maybe you have more inclination or bandwidth to say, okay, now I'm feeling better. Now maybe I'll make some of those changes that I know I should have been making all along. So it's like sort of getting you in the right frame of mind if you have the right ingredients.
And let's go down that a little further because I take a fair number of supplements and I experiment, and it's one of those challenging things, right? Because I think a lot of people, in my own experience and in just talking to people, they don't give it enough time. They try a bottle of something or whatever, and like, oh, I don't feel any different. What practical advice, Shawn, do you have when it comes to supplements? Are there a couple that you at least recommend guys check out? And then as far as like a protocol, what is your recommendation for trying supplements?
Yeah, so I'll tell you the most important thing that when choosing a supplement is to not choose anything that has generic ingredients in it. It is the like cardinal guiding light that people that want to use supplement. Meaning that, people have heard of, I'll just use one as an example, ashwagandha, right? So ashwagandha is this herb that's out there. You see it all over the place, and it has all these claims for lowering stress and lowering your cortisol and helping you feel better and all this kind of stuff. There are 3 ashwagandha extracts on the market that have any clinical research on them. So anytime that that you hear about an ashwagandha study, like a clinical trial where it's actually placebo controlled and randomized and published and peer reviewed and all that kind of stuff, it was one of 3 extracts. So someone will hear that, they'll go, oh, ashwagandha. I'll go to Amazon and I'll type in ashwagandha and look, this one's $12 for 30-day supply. Let me get that one. They get it shipped to their house overnight. They try it for a couple of days and it does nothing. They feel absolutely no difference from it. And they go, oh, this is garbage. It doesn't work. Ashwagandha doesn't work. No, what they actually got was they got some low potency, cheap, generic powder that doesn't match to what was the actual stuff used in the clinical trial. So like as a scientist, this is a soapbox I get up on all the time to say like, hey, all this sort of borrowed research out there, what you want to look for is try to find out the actual name of the ashwagandha extract, the brand name that was used in that clinical trial, and then go buy that one because it's out there on the market somewhere. And usually the companies that are using that one will go out of their way to say, this is why we're using this one. This is why we're using this amount of this one. This is why our product cost, $32 instead of $12 because it's more expensive extract for a reason. Like that is the most important thing when you're choosing your supplements. Don't just get some generic herb for the cheapest price. Like really ask the questions of like, is this the one? Is this the right one? And like they'll be named something. Like they'll have a fanciful name. Like with ashwagandha, there's one called Shodan. There's one called Sensoril. There's one called KSM 66. And those are the ones that like if you're looking for like a proven one, you'll find a product that uses one of those proven ones. And then that goes for every herb that you have ever heard of before. There's a research validated one, and then there's 100 different generic versions that really don't do anything.
Yeah. Boy, Shawn, you just gave me an idea for a future episode. Maybe I'll invite you back. I'd love to talk about this because buying supplements, I don't care how smart you are or how much money you have, it is such an inexact science. And you're right, the default mode these days is just to go to Amazon. And
Yep.
just like you said, is there any other practical advice though? So you gave some specifics, like really do the research. Are you saying, I don't think you're saying this, but are you saying don't buy supplements on Amazon, or is there a
No, not
super,
necessarily. I actually will send people to Amazon all the time. But what I'll do is I'll send them a specific link, and I'll say
yeah.
buy this product. Don't click on that. And Amazon's really good at saying like, oh, you might also want to consider this one. So like don't do that. And like one of the best places people can look is look at the actual supplement facts panel. So like if you were to pick up a bottle, right? There's the front of the bottle and there's all the miraculous claims of what this product is supposed to do. But then look at the supplement facts panel, and there'll be an image of that on the website that you're looking at. You'll be like in the supplement facts panel, it will say the brand name of those different herbs. So this is a product that I formulated. This has 8 different branded ingredients in it. So every single one of those 8 ingredients that are in there has its own set of clinical trials on it. So, I want people to look at this and go, "Oh, I've never seen that strain of bacteria before. What does that do?" And I mean, you can go to our website and see that and see the research that's been done on it. But then like that has its own clinical trials. And then the next ingredient, its own clinical trials. And the next ingredient, the own clinical trials. There aren't any generic herbs on there. And that's what people really need to watch out for.
Well, unfortunately, you know this too. There's a lot of misleading stuff, especially on Amazon, and fake products,
Yep.
blatantly ripping off well-known brand name products.
Yeah,
And
that are
so
just counterfeits.
It's a
Yeah.
minefield. Yeah,
Yep.
it's a minefield. Is something like Consumer Labs, is that something you recommend? Or, I mean, there's nothing out there that I'm aware of that sort of at least gives the consumer, not the scientist, but the consumer, some objective information.
Yeah, so Consumer Labs does a decent job. There's a new app out called Suppco, SUPPCO, that is trying to be like sort of like a consumer reports for dietary supplements. And they're nice places to start. What those companies will tell you is what they do a good job of doing is saying, is the thing that you're looking at, is it actually in there, right? So that sort of like, does the label match what's actually in the capsule, or the label match what's actually in the powder? That's an okay way to go. But if you're looking for like real clinical evidence, what is this going to do for me? Then like looking for the brand names is really like I said before, like the guiding light. That's the smartest, easiest thing you can do is say what's the best brand of this particular herb, and then go find that in the actual products.
Yeah, great advice. Very insightful. So, Shawn, before we wrap up here, is there anything that you'd want to, say to a guy over 50 that we've touched on a lot? Obviously, we want them, again, to go check out your books, your resources, your YouTube channel. And I'm going to ask you to share all that in a moment. But is there any other advice you'd want a guy to hear?
Yeah, I guess I guess the biggest thing is that once you pass 50, you think it's I think a lot of guys our age think it's a downward slide from here, right?
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to gain a
Inevitable.
little bit of weight.
Right.
I'm going to lose some muscle mass. My sex drive is going to go down. Yeah, I'm going to lose my hair, which I lost a long time ago. And I want guys to know that it can actually be the best years of your life. You can be in the best shape of your life. You can be in the best mood. You can be like when I go to the gym, I'll come back from the gym sometimes and I'll say to my wife, I'll go, oh, I'm going to be really sore tomorrow. And she used to think like, oh, you're going to be sore because you were showing off for some girls, at the gym. And I'm showing off for the young guys, right? The high school boys that are in there after school doing their football workouts. I'm trying to out squat them. So like that's the possibility that you have as a 50 plus guy these days, right? There's a lot of cool technology that's out there, or not technology maybe, but there's science that we can apply to actually be the best versions of ourselves right now. So it's a good time of life.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So, Shawn, how can my audience learn more about you? Where can they connect with you? Your YouTube channel, where are your books?
Yeah, so my YouTube channel is just my name, Dr. Shawn Talbot. I've got a website that I keep a lot of my information, like educational content at, which is doctalbot.com. And then I've got another website, Three Waves Wellness, where we have product information, we've got educational information, we've got blogs, we've got, I try to make I try to take this science and make it as applicable as possible
Mm-hmm.
so people can grab onto it and like plug it into their lives.
Very good. And by the way, I was doing some research. I watch YouTube. I don't even watch TV anymore. And I'm like, my wife's watching baseball games. I'm down there geeking on YouTube. And I'm doing some research just the other night, and there you popped up, and I'm like, oh, I'm going to be talking to him in a couple of days.
That's great.
It was a video he did on yogurt of all things. What a dork I am.
One of my favorite foods, yogurt. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Oh, listen, yes. And homemade yogurt, what a difference too.
Oh,
But
yeah.
that's a whole other topic. Shawn, before we wrap up, I have my Unstoppable After 50 trifecta. It's 3 quick questions, 3 quick answers. What is one hard truth that men after 50 need to hear when it comes to mental fitness?
Well, I guess I would just riff a little bit on what I just said is like we can be better than we were before. Like a lot of the guys that I work with now will say to me, they're like, I'm in better shape now than I was when I was in my 20s, and that's completely possible. Based on what we have access to. We've got access to better nutrition information, better sleep information, better information, and we can put together the right program for us to give us a level of performance we had when we were half our age.
What's something a lot of guys over 50 are doing that is silently wrecking their future?
I would say that they're not getting enough sleep, or they're getting poor quality sleep. Sleep is one of my like things that again, it's something I get up on a soapbox on because it's so underappreciated, right? Everyone listening has heard a million times you're supposed to get 8 hours of sleep every night, right? And most of us don't. Most of us get around 6. And just the difference between getting 8 hours versus getting 6 hours, we call it 8 hours sleeper a normal sleeper. We call a 6 hour sleeper a short sleeper. The difference between those 2 hours of missed sleep is about a 50% overexposure to cortisol. And so that cortisol is going to break down your muscles. It's going to break down the neurons in your brain. It's going to suppress your immune system. It's going to encourage the growth of belly fat. If you could just get that 8 hours of sleep, your blood sugar would be better, your cortisol would be lower, your belly fat would lessen, you'd be mentally sharp. Like all the things go back in a normal direction, and all you have to do is sleep for 2 hours. It is the easiest performance enhancer that you can imagine. And most guys just go, well, I don't have time for that, right? But you'll get up an hour early to go to the gym. Well, maybe you should, carve out an hour on the earlier side so you can get to bed, an hour earlier. It's gonna pay huge dividends.
And finally, Shawn, what is one thing guys over 50 can do this week to help them be unstoppable?
Yeah, number one thing, eat more fiber. Of all the things that I could recommend nutritionally, getting more fiber in your diet is the number one thing you're going to be able to do. Really easy, really cheaply, and it's going to pay huge dividends because that fiber is going to be the food for your microbiome to start making all these positive signaling molecules that we're talking about. More neurotransmitters, more short chain fatty acids, fewer inflammatory molecules just by adding a couple of servings of fiber this week.
Well, Shawn, thank you very much. So many insights here. I thank you for sending your book. And, I went through it, and I would encourage all my audience to go check it out. Check out his YouTube and channel and all his resources. So, Shawn, thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure, Mike. Thanks a lot.
I don't know about you, but I found that conversation with Dr. Shawn Talbott fascinating. There were so many things he shared that I personally want to dive into deeper. Again, I would recommend his book, recommend his YouTube channel. Check him out. He is the real deal. And if you like what I'm doing here with Unstoppable After 50, please make sure you like and subscribe to the show. Go check out the YouTube channel. Appreciate you subscribing there. And also make sure you check out unstoppableafter50.com and sign up for my weekly playbook. Every week I send a recap to my group of men who've asked for it, a PDF that's designed to be printed and saved, and it's a recap of that previous week's episode. So check out unstoppableafter50.com.